I created the environment for us to start working in. It's pretty simple. I created two components, one of them called cube, one of them called sandbox. The cube is this little thing here that's going to be our draggable component, and the sandbox is this whole thing here, with the zone being in the middle, whatever we're going to drop into. As you can see, when I click and I drag, nothing happens. Now, we can change that by using the draggable prop. Once I save, you'll be able to see the little phantom cube behind my cursor that's being dragged. That's good, but it's doing nothing. So what we want to look for essentially is a listener. In React, you can just type in drag and go through all these listeners here that contain drag in them. There are so many, so if you're interested in checking what each and one of them does, you can just go on Google and read about it on MDN. But for now, for this example, we're going to be using onDragStart and onDragEnd. And I already created two functions here just to speed things up. The onDrag function just console logs that the cube is being dragged, and the onDrop console logs that the cube is dropped. So let's go ahead and try it out. So onDragStart, we'll call onDrag, and onDragDrop, onDrop. So now if I click the cube and start dragging, we can see that the cube is being dragged. Now if I drop it, cube is dropped. Perfect. So now how do we get data from one place to another, from here to the zone? For this, we're going to be using e.dataTransfer. It's an object and it's used to hold any data transferred between contexts. And now the method that we're going to be using on it is the setData. setData. Now inside that setData, there are two arguments. First, it's the name. Consider it as a key value pair. This is the key and this is the value. Let's go ahead and call this type. So the type is going to be a cube. All right. So what we want to do is move on to the next component and extract the data in order to render it. Now in the sandbox, you can see that I created a state here. I called it widgets, and that state is an empty array. So in this example, what I want to do essentially is drag and drop as many cubes in the zone, and it's just going to fill out with the cubes. And the way it does that is through mapping through that array and rendering elements according to how many items are in that array. So as you can see, I created two functions here, the handle drag over and the handle drop. If we go here to the zone, the red cube, and we go, if we hit drag, we'll see on drag over, and that's going to be handle drag over, and on drop, because we'll be dropping the cube inside of that. So same thing, handle drop. Now if we drag the cube, we see the console log showing us repeatedly that the item is being hovered over the cube. It's being dragged over the zone. If we let go, it says cube is dropped, but it doesn't actually print the message that we gave it here. Why is that? The reason is because we need to call e.preventDefault. And the reason you need to call preventDefault on the drag over to make onDrop work is because by default, the browser's behavior when an item is dragged over a target element is to not allow the drop to happen. This is a security feature to prevent certain actions like accidentally dragging and dropping files or data that might affect the page. If we go here and we call e.preventDefault and we save and we drag and we drop, we can see that the message kicks in. So now let's go ahead and extract the data that we injected. So here I will go to e.dataTransfer.getData. So it's get data this time instead of set data. And we're gonna use the key value that we entered here in set data. So we're gonna use type. If we assign it to a variable, and then we console log that variable, drag and drop, and we can see it right here. So now that we got the data, what we want to do is we want to add it to the array, the state that we initialize. Now, keep this in mind that there are thousands of ways to do this, guys. This data can be a class name that you injected. It can be a pointer to some component. It can be anything that you can use to point it at a component that you want to render. In this case, I'm using classes. So whatever value I injected, which is the cube string, is going to be used by me as a class name in order to render the element inside the zone. And I will show you exactly what I mean. So we're gonna do set widgets, and we're gonna do here old widgets. I'm gonna return old widgets and data. And now to confirm that this is working, we can console log widgets. There we go. So that's working right. If we go to the cube component here, we can see that I'm using the cube class name. And if we go to the index.css, we can see it exactly there. That means that if I render an empty div right here with that class name, it's going to give me the cube. It's going to show up here. So if I do this, if I give it class name cube, you can see it pop up. Whenever we drag and we drop, we are essentially dropping these items in an array that we cannot see. Now we want to make that item seen, and in order to make it seen, we have to render the items in the array. And to do that, we're going to use the map method. So map widgets, or widgets.map, and for each widget in widgets, we're going to return a div, and the class name of the div is going to be widget. Now we can see it show up here. Now if we refresh, drag and drop, and drag and drop, and we can see the cubes appearing as we want them to.